Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
It's our News Digest unit for the month of January. And today we're talking about a graffiti artist by the name of Banksy. But we're not really talking about his art so much. We are actually talking about some kind of charity project that he has to help out migrants who are kind of stuck in the Mediterranean Sea trying to get from Africa to Europe to have a better life.
Yeah, these are people that jump on boats and are going from their own home country to a new country, especially to find work. And hopefully their wish is that they can remain in that country and settle down and have a life. Sadly, a lot of these people are on bad boats, or they aren't really welcomed in the countries that they're sailing to, and some of them get stuck out there and die, or they're taken as hostages and slaves by bad people. So Banksy, who is a pretty famous street artist, he's anonymous though, he's a street artist in the UK. He used a lot of his money to fund a ship that goes out and rescues these migrants in the Mediterranean Sea over there in Europe.
Indeed, and I described him as a graffiti artist, but I guess technically he's a street artist,
right,
which is probably slightly different from a graffiti artist. I guess if I have time, I'll try to explain the differences later on in our program, but basically he's trying to help these ships in the Mediterranean Sea, and he wants to rescue those migrants. So let's find out what this is all about. Let's read the entire contents of today's lesson now one time.
Banksy, a UK-based artist, renowned for street art depicting strong political and social commentary, recently financed a rescue ship for migrants fleeing North Africa. The Louise Michel, featuring bright pink paint and Banksy's artwork, departed Spain in August 2020. Crew aboard the Louise Michel were able to rescue 89 people as the ship conducted its maiden voyage in the Mediterranean Sea. The Louise Michel then stumbled upon another 130 migrants, whom the crew managed to rescue as well. With no fewer than 200 people aboard, the crew transmitted distress calls, hoping to receive help from nearby coast guards. Only the Italian Coast Guard responded, taking on 49 of the Louise Michel's most vulnerable passengers. Sea-Watch 4, another humanitarian ship, took on 150 more, adding to the 200 migrants it already had on board. In recent years, many sub-Saharan Africans have traveled to Libya for work, only to find themselves facing discrimination and political turmoil. Many have ended up in detention centers where they've been tortured and enslaved. With no other option better than escaping, large numbers of migrants risk crossing the Mediterranean to Europe. Unfortunately, lots of them die along the way due to shoddy boats, callous traffickers, and rough waters. Some estimates even put the death rate for those who attempt the crossing at a terrifying 15%. The crews of the Louise Michel and Sea-Watch 4, as well as a commercial vessel called the Marx Etienne, carrying 27 rescued migrants, have faced complications finding ports for their passengers to disembark at. Most European countries have closed their borders to migrants, with the situation becoming even more acute thanks to COVID-19. Furthermore, newly introduced anti-immigration policies in Malta and Italy have led to fewer rescue missions, leaving many of the migrants in political limbo.
Okay, let's get to it. Let's talk about the content of today's lesson right now. Okay, the title here is Banksy-Funded Ship rescues migrants in the Mediterranean Sea. So again, we did talk about who Banksy is. This ship is funded by Banksy. He's the person who provides the money for this particular ship, so it's funded by him. And this ship rescues migrants in the Mediterranean Sea. A migrant, of course, is somebody who's trying to move from one place to another in order to find work. And they're kind of temporary. They're kind of nomadic, I guess you could say. When I was younger, I knew the Silva family. They were migrant farm workers from Texas, and they would go around the United States to different places and help with the harvest there. Umberto later became a lawyer, so he got out of that lifestyle there. But in any case here, these are migrants, people trying to move from Africa up to Europe to find work, to find a better life. And of course, the ocean there between Africa and Europe is called the Mediterranean Sea, which means the sea in the middle of land, basically Mediterranean. And of course, that's the sea around Italy, Spain, Cyprus, Turkey, etc., Libya, Algeria. The Mediterranean Sea is right there.
Yeah, it sure is. Well, a guy named Banksy, and we've described him a little bit. He's UK-based. He lives in the United Kingdom, and he's a street artist, and he's known for his art, which depicts strong political and social commentary. Commentary is opinion. So if you're listening to the news, you'll have straight news reporters who are just supposed to report the facts. And then you'll have people who have comments about it. They provide commentary. So commentary is just how you feel about something. It's the expression of your opinions, or maybe you're explaining what an event or situation might mean, or what might come from it. That's commentary. And we'll see it on TV. We'll see it in newspapers, magazines. That's commentary. So Banksy recently financed or paid for a rescue ship for migrants who are coming from North Africa. When you see this word fleeing, it means they're running and getting away as fast as they can. Usually we flee from danger or a dangerous situation. Of course, if you're a bad guy and you've robbed a bank, those bank robbers are probably fleeing from the police. But here the migrants were fleeing North Africa. That's their home, and they were trying to go to a better place.
Okay, so what's the name of this ship? Well, it's called the Louise Michel, okay, and it features bright pink paint, and it also features Banksy's artwork. So yes, it's easy to see in the water with this bright pink paint, and it also has his artwork. It departed Spain in August of 2020, so it left Spain in the month of August last year. And crew aboard the Louise Michel were able to rescue 89 people as the ship conducted its maiden voyage in the Mediterranean Sea. So be careful about the word crew there. That's referring to the whole group of people. So the crew were able to rescue all these people here. It does refer to all the individual members of the crew in this particular case. And they rescued all of those people. The ship conducted its maiden voyage. A maiden here usually refers to a girl who is not married, right? Like, for example, my mother's married name was my father's surname, but her maiden name was Rowan, R-O-W-A-N. That's her maiden name, the name she had when she was not married. But in this particular case, the maiden voyage is the first time the ship goes out into the sea. Like the Titanic, for example, sank on its maiden voyage.
Yeah, you'll see this word maiden if you're reading old literature. We don't use it nowadays except to talk about our name, our last name before we got married. Of course, here you guys don't take on your husband's names typically. But, say my name is Buckley. That's my mom and dad's last name. So Buckley is my maiden name. And then if I were to get married, that would I wouldn't use that name anymore. Or some people decide to use their name. So that's the only time we'll use it in these modern times. But you will see it in books. In the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, they'll describe some of these young unmarried girls as maidens. So this Louise Michel then stumbled upon a another 130 migrants. So they hadn't planned on running into these migrants, but they were people who were desperately needing some help. So, of course, they tried to rescue them as well. You can stumble upon lots of different things. Maybe you're out shopping, and you're just going to go buy maybe some groceries, but you stumble upon a secondhand bookstore and you find a couple of copies of books you've been dying to own for yourself. Well, you just kind of stumbled upon this bookstore. You didn't plan on finding it. It wasn't on your list of things to do, but you take advantage of it. Well, the boat just happened to run into these migrants, and the crew managed to rescue them as well. I wanted to mention, Tom pointed out that crew is a collective noun. So is staff. So if you talk about the people who work for your company, please don't say staffs, guys. It's just staff. And if you're a boss, you might say, yes, I have 100 people on my staff. Not in my staff, but on my staff. Now, if you're talking about different companies and they both have different types of staff, you could put them together and then you can add an S. But be careful with staff and with crew. And with audience.
Indeed, yeah.
Audience, too.
Audience, indeed. Crew. There are other words as well. So, don't add S's to those words there. But again, the crew of the Louise Michel stumbled across or stumbled upon some more migrants there. You could also say they encountered, they came across some more migrants there, and they, of course, rescued them as well. Look at the word whom here. That's referring to the migrants that were just mentioned. They stumbled upon another 130 migrants, and of those people, the crew were able to rescue them as well. They rescued all of them. So that's what whom here does. It refers back to the thing that was just mentioned there. And with no fewer than 200 people aboard, the crew transmitted distress calls, hoping to receive help from nearby coast guards. So we're not talking about individual people working in a coast guard. We're talking about different ships, different fleets of ships from different countries, from Greece, from Italy, from France, from Spain, or wherever. And so they were sending out distress calls on their radio. They were probably using marine band frequencies or something like that. And of course, when you're using a radio, a two-way radio, you will transmit your signal and then you will receive signals. So they sent out these calls for help, these distress calls. SOS, we're in trouble. Somebody come and help us, please.
Yeah, so transmit here just means to broadcast or to send out some sort of message. A radio and television station will transmit their programs or broadcast their programs. Yeah, you also use transmit, guys, to talk about passing a disease from one person to another. This man transmitted his bubonic plague to his neighbor.
Oh, no.
So, transmitted distress calls, SOS, as Tom was saying, and they were hoping someone would hear it and come to help. Coast Guards are people who help in emergencies. They're close to the water. So if they maybe they have to rescue people who are drowning, or maybe the ship went down, the Coast Guard from each separate country will go out and try to help people. I think most countries have a Coast Guard if they're near water. They could be on the edge of a sea or the ocean.
It's similar to the Navy, but it's, I guess, just there to protect the border of the country.
Yeah, instead
and
of
not fight
international,
anybody. Pretty much, yeah. Okay, well, we'll continue talking about this in just a couple of seconds, but first, we need to hear from our Chinese teacher.
Hello, my name is Shelby. 标题：地中海上有很多的难民。Banksy founded a ship， 由英国艺术家 Banksy 资助的船拯救了难民。文章一开始先交代背景，班克斯，英国的艺术家 ，renowned for 以什么著名 ？depict 描述，加上 ing 变成分词，修饰 street art。他强烈描写政治和社会的 commentary 评论，与 comment 不同 ，commentary 通常比较长而且完整。最近资助了一艘船，帮助移民逃离北非。第二句，这艘船 featuring bright pink paint 以亮粉色为特色。A feature B。A 以 B 为特色，这里写成 ing 分词，形成分词构句。逗点之后的 depart 才是主要动词。depart 同时有离开、 以及出发的含义。Depart Spain 离开西班牙。船员救了89名的难民，当这船展开它的处女航的时候。第二段，接着米歇尔号又 stumbled upon 130位的移民。Stumble 有绊倒、蹒跚的意思，但是 stumble upon 当成偶遇，也可以写成 stumble across， 相当于 run into 或者 come across。船员也顺利地拯救了他们。第二句 ，With no fewer than 200 people aboard， 船上超过200人。No fewer than 加数字，表示呢不少于这数字，是相当大数字的表示方法。船员发出了 distress calls。distress 忧伤，当发生事故求救发出 SOS， 就是发出 distress calls， 也可以写成 distress signals， 希望能得到海岸警卫队的协助。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everybody. Where we left off, we were talking about the Louise Michel. That's a boat funded by Banksy, the famous street artist who is anonymous, and they rescued some migrants, and they ended up with lots of people on board the boat. I guess it had more people than the boat should have had, and they were sending out distress calls. They were transmitting those distress calls, and only the Italian Coast Guard responded, taking on 49 of the Louise Michel's most vulnerable passengers. Good for the Italians there. And these were vulnerable passengers, so they didn't rescue all of them. They just took some of the passengers who were kind of weak. They were vulnerable. Maybe they were women and children or old people or sick people. They wanted to help out the people who needed the most help.
So there's another ship here, Sea-Watch 4. Notice that it's in italics. That kind of print is slanted or leans a little bit. It's the name of something, so we'll often italicize it. Sea-Watch 4 was another humanitarian ship, and they took on 150 more, adding to the 200 migrants it already had on board. So that's 350. If you're doing something that's described as being humanitarian, it's concerned with helping people who are needing desperate help. Maybe they're the elderly or the hungry or the needy. Humanitarian projects are always very charitable, and they're trying to help people. So in recent years, many sub-Saharan Africans have traveled to Libya for work. They just want to have a better life, but they find themselves facing discrimination. People saying, oh, we don't like your type. You're not welcome here. And there's also a lot of political turmoil going on in Libya as we speak. So many have ended up in detention centers where they've sadly been tortured and enslaved or made slaves out of them. A detention center is some sort of building or area that people are held until the government or people who are in power can decide what to do with them. So maybe you went to school and you were sometimes not a good kid in class, and the teacher said, you have detention after school. We had detention if you were bad in school and you were not obeying the teacher, and just meant you'd go to this room after class and you'd have to sit there for an hour or more and just do your homework. It was horrible. I never had detention because I was very obedient.
I can't imagine you ever getting detention. No. I had it a couple of times. But I guess most boys probably get detention at one time or another. But in this particular case, they were kept in jails or prison cells or something, and they were tortured there.
Terrible.
At least some of them were. Tortured means people cause you to experience pain, whether it's for fun or to get information or whatever. That's what torture is.
They're hurting you physically, yeah.
Exactly. You might be tortured by the police, for example, to get you to confess to a crime or something like that. And to be enslaved is to become a slave, to work for somebody without pay, and you can never escape. And with no other option better than escaping, large numbers of migrants risk crossing the Mediterranean to Europe. So, they get to Libya there. Conditions are terrible, so they try to escape and say, I'm getting out of here. Libya is a horrible place. let's try to go to Europe instead. We'll take our chances there. But unfortunately, lots of these people die along the way due to shoddy boats, callous traffickers, and rough waters. So something is shoddy, it's a very poor quality, it's in very bad condition. So these boats are probably not seaworthy, they could easily sink or have problems. That's what shoddy means. And callous here just means they don't really care. They're just taking the money and we're going to try to get you there, but if you fall overboard, we're not going to try to save you. That's not our job. And also the rough waters there, of course, the Mediterranean Sea can be quite rough there with big waves and stuff like that, which could wash over the bow of the boat and everybody might drown.
And some people put the death rate for those who are trying to cross at a terrifying 15%. So that death rate is very high. Well, the crews of the Louise Michel and Sea-Watch 4, as well as a commercial vessel would be a boat that is transporting goods that they want to sell or trade with other countries. So that's not a humanitarian ship. It's a commercial vessel. Vessel just means a container for something. We often call boats that. This one's called the Maersk Etienne, or Tom had a better pronunciation for this one. He said it Maersk Etienne. This is French. Etienne actually means Stephen in French.
Okay.
Maersk or Marsk, I don't know what it means. But anyway, this particular boat was carrying 27 rescued migrants. So even though they were commercial and they were, they weren't involved with these rescue missions, they still had a good crew on the ship, and they wanted to help. So they were carrying 27 rescued migrants. They faced complications finding ports for their passengers to disembark at. See, a lot of these countries don't want more migrants. They call them illegal immigrants, whatever. They have too many people already, and especially with COVID-19, I know they're having problems. So what they'd say is, you cannot dock here. So that ship is stuck. It has no place to to sail to. So that's what they're talking about. They're finding it hard to find countries that will welcome them.
Right, disembark means to get off the boat and go ashore.
It also means to get off the plane, too.
It does indeed. And most European countries have closed their borders to migrants, with the situation becoming even more acute thanks to COVID-19. Here we've got the word acute, which means more severe, more difficult. It's a bad situation. So yes, indeed, you could talk about an acute shortage of gasoline, for example. We can't get enough gasoline, so everybody has to walk to work because we don't have enough gasoline for our cars. And furthermore, or in addition, newly introduced anti-immigration policies in Malta and Italy have led to fewer rescue missions, leaving many of the migrants in political limbo. Okay, so yeah, this is pretty bad. These governments have new policies against immigration. No, we have enough people. We've got enough of our own problems. We can't take any more of these migrants. It's a terrible thing to do, but we've got to take care of our own people. And so they have fewer rescue missions. And then these people are kind of stuck out there at sea. They're in political limbo. Limbo kind of means you're between things. You're not in one place, you're not in the other, but you're in between, and you can't just stay there forever.
Yeah, it's kind of you're in this period where a decision needs to be made, but it hasn't been made yet, so you don't really know what's going to happen. So these poor migrants are in political limbo. We'll have to stay tuned to see what happens. Right now, we're going to listen one more time to our Chinese teacher.
结果只有意大利海岸警卫队回应。第三句逗点之后 ，taking on 49 vulnerable passengers。take on 有具有承担，这里当接受的意思。曾经有一首红极一时的情歌，就叫做 Take on Me， 就是希望对方接纳他。好 ，vulnerable passengers 是脆弱的旅客。我们到第三段。最近呢，撒哈拉沙漠以南的非洲人前往利比亚工作。字首 sub 表示以下 Saharan 撒哈拉沙漠，世界上最大的沙漠。Only to find only to 加原形动词，这个动词呢经常表示结果，往往是意外或不幸，所以结果发现他们面对歧视和政治的纷扰。第二句，许多人最后被关在拘留所 end up in detention centers. End up 后面通常加动名词、名词或介系词片语等，表示最后落得什么下场。Detention 拘留， detention center 或者 detention home 都是临时的收容所。在这里，他们遭受虐待和奴役。句尾的 enslaved 使作奴隶，因为人们被拘捕做奴隶，所以用被动形容。下一句 With no other option better than escaping， 由于没有比逃跑更好的选择， option 选择，没有其他选项比 escaping 逃跑更好，用 no 加比较级加 than 来表示最高级。大量的移民冒着风险跨越地中海到欧洲， risk 冒险，后面加 VING 或者名词表示冒什么之险。 Cross 是穿越，穿越马路就是 cross the road。 第四句，很不幸的，很多人死亡，由于劣质的船 Callous traffickers， Callous 无情的，麻木不仁的。 Human trafficker 就是人口走私犯，那人口走私 Human trafficking。 第四段第一句，这2艘船的船员都面临 complications， 寻找港口。 Complications 复杂或者困难，在什么方面有困难就写成 have difficulties in something， 或者这里 have complications in something。 介系词 in 可以省略，所以这句中 find 写成 finding， 因为前面的 in 被省略掉了。 Disembark 登陆上岸。第二句，很多欧洲国家关闭边境，而且情况变得更 acute 指急性的或剧烈的。最后一句 furthermore 而且转折语，连接上下2句。新实施的反对移民政策在马耳他、意大利导致更少的拯救任务，使许多移民在政治上被孤立。后半句 leaving many of the migrants in political limbo， 分词构句。 leave 这里是连缀动词，后面加受词，再加受词补语，表示状态。 limbo 是地狱的边缘， in political limbo 在政治上被孤立遗忘了。整段都是在描述说难民们现在在海上呢进退维谷。以上是今天的讲解，谢谢收听。
That's all the time we have for this News Digest story about the Banksy-funded ship rescuing migrants. If you want to know more about this issue, just go to the news and look up a couple of these ships' names and you can see what eventually happened to these migrants. For English Digest, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Tom. Goodbye.
See ya.